This conference will now be recorded.
Right. That means it is 6 o'clock on the nose. We are here in beautiful Fort Collins downtown. for the September 5th North Front Range Transportation Air Quality Planning Council. We start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe is over the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. I will call this meeting to order. We'll start with public comment. Is there any public in the seats? None, seeing none. We'll move on to item number 3, which is the approval of minutes. That would be the August 1st meeting. The page number 10 of the packet, if you haven't looked at it, those of us that have. Any questions, changes?
Move to approve the minutes for the NPO meeting on August 1st.
Great. Will you hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, dispatch that. All right, we'll begin with the lead planning agency for air quality agenda. The item number 4, Air Pollution Control Division. Jessica Thurko is not online or in the room, but she does provide a handout in the handout packet. And number 5, we got the NFRMPO Air Quality Program updates. Dina Wojat, you're not in the room, so I assume you're online.
I'm here. Can you see me and hear me?
We can hear you, but I don't see you.
All right. Well, I will turn my camera off anyway then, since you can't see me.
We can see you.
Oh,
People online can.
The folks online can. I think we've got to disconnect the
okay.
technology.
I apologize. I'm sitting in my car at my son's football practice, so you get what you get. In terms of air quality, August was another busy month. So we were looking at ozone levels. They continued to increase. The 4th max values, again, are the values that we're using. All above 70 parts per billion, which is the standard. And we also saw that Rocky Mountain National Park monitor, its values were above 70 as well. So that further kind of cemented in the state's request for a voluntary reclassification. Again, that was based on data 21 through 23. So not this year. But the area did not attain the standard and sought a voluntary reclassification under the 2015 ozone standard to reduce the to reduce or change the classification from moderate to serious. And again, that's under the 2015 standard. And I do want to note that under the 2008 standard, which is the higher, less stringent standard, the area was already classified as severe. And so many of the requirements that are in place for that are already apply. And so the voluntary downgrade was, from what I understand, an effort to kind of save the planning staff resources so they could focus on the next SIP that they're working on in terms of the serious 2015 standard. All right, moving on. We did see that 2 new ozone monitors were installed and became operational during the summer in the North Front Range NPO area. So we saw a new monitor installed in Timnath. And then we saw also another monitor in the Fossil Creek Reservoir area. So those were just brought online, and it's going to take 3 full years before we start really looking at them in terms of design values as well. But it's just important to know that there's additional monitoring in place, and yet one more monitor planned to go into the Loveland area in sometime in the next 12 months. So we'll be tracking and watching that. All right. There are additional monitors that are being planned for air toxics as well. And so we're just going to continue to watch what new monitors go into place and what's going on there. In terms of the Air Quality Control Commission, they adopted revisions to their state implementation plan, removing the carbon monoxide elements and retaining related control strategies. So that was reflecting Colorado's air quality success story that we've talked about a couple of times, and it actually came up in the Colorado Sun ozone event discussion last night. So again, that's an air quality success story, and it was more than 20 years in the making to bring the area into attainment for that, and largely because of how the fleet had changed and controls for vehicles had changed over time. The Colorado Air Quality Control Commission also set a November rulemaking hearing for their procedural rules. That's something that we've been tracking. They were briefed on the Rocky Mountain National Park initiative. So they're looking at nitrogen deposition. So nitrogen from air pollution sources being deposited up in the park and changing its ecology. So it was reported that the monitor's not meeting the 2022 milestone. And so they're gearing up, reevaluating what they understand in terms of the current science and emission inventories. They continue to look at NOx emission reductions for a variety of different sources, which will also benefit the Rocky Mountain National Park nitrogen deposition. As well as then they've got a voluntary program that they're working on. They've actually implemented with the agricultural community to change best management practices at places like feedlots and animal feed yards, that kind of thing. So I think dairy farms as well. So that was fairly interesting. At the Regional Air Quality Control Commission, they announced a meeting on the September 24th to discuss regulating indirect sources of emissions. And so those are places that are non-traditional sources of air pollution, but think of large installations or facilities that either draw vehicle traffic due to its being developed and constructed, or as a result of its operations. And so big box stores, Amazon warehouses, those kinds of things are the example. And so we're going to see a kickoff of, considering what that control strategy could look like. And again, that's kicking off on September 24th. The RAC also was briefed on a current vehicle inspection and maintenance program that applies to a large part of the ozone non-attainment area, but not all. And it applies to both gasoline vehicles, and there's some requirements for diesel vehicles as well. They're looking at revising those rules and expanding them. And so they're holding, meaning the Air Pollution Control Division is running that stakeholder process, holding some stakeholder meetings beginning later in September. And so there's a link there if you're at all interested in looking that up or tracking what's going on there. At the RAC's Control Strategies Committee meeting, also, they do continue to talk about motor vehicle emission budgets. Again, those are budgets that are set in the SIP in terms of NOx and VOC emissions from transportation. And there's some discussion about what that might look like. What I did find interesting is that separately, the RAC presented information to the Transportation Legislative Review Committee in August. They were calling for a 20% reduction in emissions overall, and actually recommended legislation to that committee in terms of tightening motor vehicle emission budgets. So there's that relationship there. We're going to track that. and looking for legislation authorizing, the Air Quality Control Commission to regulate indirect sources, and then also pursue legislation related to vehicle I&M. So there's a couple of different tracks here that we're watching, both at the RAC and then at this Transportation Legislative Review Committee. So a couple of different fronts we're going to watch for its impact or its activities and how it relates to the North Front Range NPO. Moving on, EPA approved Colorado's voluntary reclassification. I've already discussed that. And then moving on to EPA acting on previously submitted SIP revisions related to regulations as to how Colorado is going to seek emission reductions. So they've acted on a number of SIPs that have been submitted to EPA. Many of them were approved. There were pieces of them that were not approved. And in fact, EPA has done something, they've moved forward with something called a conditional approval, which means, if Colorado meets a certain timeline and makes these requested changes in terms of the implementing regulations, then we will approve those implementing regulations. So there's some specific regulations related to like foam manufacturing and different types of industries that they're trying to just tweak to make sure that it's EPA approvable. What's more important with all of that is through that action, EPA says as long as Colorado does those things, that they will not trigger the sanctions. Sanctions will not go into place. And so just as a highlight, sanctions in those cases where there's not an approvable SIP or there are issues with it, EPA can withhold federal highway funding for projects. And that's a big deal to the work that that you all do. So anyway, they have deferred that action so that those sanctions they don't go into place, but that's something that we're tracking. There's also sanctions related to industry having to pay some higher fees. We're not going to go into that. We're just going to focus here for these purposes on the withholding of federal highway funding. So again, that's not happening. But if you've heard anything about sanctions being deferred and why it might be a big deal, hopefully I've just explained why that is. And the last thing is the letter that you all discussed at the last meeting that is being developed and jointly signed by a variety of different NPOs in different states. And so that letter is anticipated to get the last signature here in the next week or so, and then actually being sent off to EPA. So I hope that gets at everything. There's probably more that I've missed, but that's plenty. So are there any questions with regards to anything that I've said?
Any questions for Dina?
Mr. Chair, I could just add that I saw the DocuSign come through with the last signature on that Intermountain West letter just yesterday or today. So yeah, it should be ready to go out anytime.
Good. Thank you for that. Anything else? All right, Dina, we'll let you get back to practice.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, bye-bye. All right, item number 6, report of the chair. I do have one item not listed. Our very own Tricia Canonico. Wow, that's pretty good. Is applying for a high office for the National League of Cities, and she asked if we could provide a letter of recommendation or support letter, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to ask Tricia to go through what the role is. I'll ask for unanimous consent. If anyone has a problem with that, then we'll discuss further. But Tricia, tell us what you're going for.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you bringing that up here. So I'm applying for the board of directors for the National League of Cities. There's 40 local electeds throughout the country that serve on the board. Currently, there's only one member from Colorado, where traditionally there's been 2 or 3 representing Colorado on that board. It's the mayor of Golden right now. I talked to Kevin Palmer from Municipal League. There are no other electeds from Colorado that are looking to run for this position that he knows of. I have served on federal boards, regional boards, and state level boards. In addition to what I do on council. So I think I have a pretty good background to be on this board of directors. I am also the chair for the legislative group with Colorado Communities for Climate Action, which is 43 municipalities and counties throughout Colorado working for better climate action. And so I've had a lot of experience. Last year I was the vice chair. I've had a lot of experience working with legislators and advocating for positions that these municipalities and counties would like to see advanced. So I think I bring that experience with me to NLC. And I've also done a lot of work with NLC. I currently sit on the University Communities Committee. I'm involved with their Women in Municipal Government. And I also serve on the Infrastructure and Transportation Federal Advocacy Board with John. So we were just at the summer meetings together for that. So I hope I would be a strong candidate for the board, and I would really appreciate the MPO's support on that. Thank you.
Thank you. You didn't know you had a speech tonight, did you?
I found out yesterday, so thanks for the heads up, John.
Yeah, I fully support Tricia's opportunity here. I think it's good to have a seat at any table that you can get a seat on. Certainly you're qualified, and I have no issue with that. The only thing I ask is that you bring back the MPO anything of national significance that maybe can help what we do here in our region. I'd appreciate that. But, any questions for Tricia?
Awesome. Good luck.
All right, I take it as unanimous consent. Hearing nothing, congratulations. The letter, do you have staff? Who's gonna write that letter?
Yes.
Not me, right?
Not you.
Okay. Let me know if I have to sign something. All right, good, thank you. We'll move on to the executive director report. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of items this evening. First, a couple of recruitment updates. Our planner position, which was recently vacated by Anna Rose, we were able to move quickly through that recruitment process and have filled it. Great news, we've selected Michaela Merrick as our new planner. Michaela's actually been working with us as an intern for several months, and she's wrapping up her master's degree in urban and regional planning. So it's been great to have a clean transition into that planner role. We do still have our mobility planner position open and are collecting applications on that. So if you know any great mid-level mobility planners, send them our way. And on the accountant front, I finally have some good news to share there that we seem to have struck the right chord to be able to access our target market. And we've got a good group of qualified candidates who have applied for that position. So we've done an initial screening. We actually have a first round of interviews with a batch of candidates next week for that accountant position. So hopefully by next month when we get together, I'll have more good news to share on that. So lots of good news on the recruiting side. For the mobility program, I have just a couple good news items as well. The Ride NOCO call center had a record month in August. We served 62 customers who we connected with mobility solutions. That's, I don't know what the second number is, but just from looking at a bar chart, it was quite a few less than 62. And then alongside that, we also launched the Transactional Data Specifications System, TDS. So that's what Corey came and talked with you all about a couple of months ago, that basically allows the different trip management systems from Saint, Raft, and the 60 Plus Ride to all be interoperable so that they can communicate with one another. Eliminates a lot of manual entry and challenges with being able to share rides between the different service providers. So we've served 5 people with that across agencies so far. And each one's kind of a case study to learn a little bit more and then go through the next time. So we'll have Corey come in a couple of months and give a more thorough update, but wanted to just share those good news items. Final one on my list is to give the Planning Council an update about conversation at the STAC meeting, which was this morning. So there was an action item on there that related to Policy Directive 14, which is called PD 14. And this is basically a policy that CDOT has that establishes the goals for the statewide planning process. And the action item today was to make a recommendation on the way that it is drafted to the Transportation Commission, which will be meeting later this month. The STAC has been talking about this for a couple of months and has expressed some concerns about the way that it's currently drafted. And today they did vote to reject the PD 14 the way that it is currently written. Like I said, there were a number of reasons for that, but really the kind of the main ones were that some things that had previously been upfront in the policy have been moved to other places or into appendices, especially related to maintaining assets and recognition of the need for capacity projects in some locations. So those were pretty central themes to the conversation. The reason I bring it up is because it is related to our conversation we're going to be having later this evening about our prioritized list of projects, because PD 14 informs that statewide plan, and then the statewide plan, of course, influences CDOT's funding priorities going forward. So I spoke with Councilmember Olson, who is our staff representative and the chair, and it sounds like a good opportunity, if the council wants to dig into that a little bit more and have more conversation about PD 14, would be to tie that in with our discussion item on our prioritized list of projects later this evening, because they're related. So we would still have the kind of original purpose of making sure we talk about establishing our priorities. But then if there's a desire to talk a little bit more about PD 14, then that's a good opportunity to do that as well. And I just saw that Councilmember Olson raised his hand as well, and they wish to that.
Okay, Johnny, you have a question? Johnny Olson?
I can't see him. Yeah, I can see him. We're showing you as muted, Johnny. Yep, Johnny, we can see you and I see your hand up, but it still shows you as being muted. He says that he's not able to unmute.
I sent you an unmute request. I don't know what that means, but look for that.
We'll give him 2 more seconds.
Can I ask a question about that while we're waiting?
Yeah.
So this is a new draft of a policy directive that's been in existence. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
I mean, so is the concern that they feel like they're not gonna prioritize maintaining assets by throwing it in an appendix? That that's no longer gonna be a priority for CDOT? Is that the concern that was raised?
The conversation's been very nuanced. I think that is a part of it, that some of the concerns that were enumerated were that by having some of these things that staff representatives saw as being very high priorities for their regions, no longer in the front portion of the policy, but in appendices, there was a concern that they would be less relied on than things that are in the front end of the policy.
I mean, I can see that with maintaining assets. Capacity projects, because of the greenhouse gas, reduction rules, I mean, already are, like, we don't expect so many capacity projects because of those restrictions in the greenhouse gas. So, I mean, yeah, I guess I'm intrigued by kind of figuring out if there was intention by CDOT in any kind of way to dismiss those kind of things. But I mean, I will say that, I mean, we've all had those conversations about greenhouse gas, the rule making that's, capacity projects are not as desirable, right? I mean, we need to find different ways of getting people around that don't increase our carbon footprint. So anyway, interesting.
We can talk more about that.
And I see Councilmember Olson's hand is up again. I saw him come off of mute.
He's trying.
So.
I just keep seeing this.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Johnny, we can hear you now.
All right. So I want to sort of expand a little bit on what Paul was saying. And we need to understand what this PD14 does. This PD14 basically sets the priorities for the commission and for the Department of Transportation to allocate the reasonably anticipated funds in the 10-year plan. So if you come in with a project and it doesn't fit the strategic criteria they have, there's a good possibility that it won't be added to the 10-year plan. So the buckets of money, resurfacing, asset management, capital improvement, whatever buckets of money, MMOF, air quality, all these different buckets of money, they set their priorities based on what they want to put their buckets of money into. So the stack was pretty upset because they showed the asset management. They took out capacity, but they increased air quality, they increased transit, and they increased a lot of the other things. And it was like, I think there's 20 people on staff, or 14, 18 people on stack, and it was 17-1 to reject it. So there's a lot of folks that are pretty upset that our voices were not heard, and the DOT pretty much said, we're going to go this way. And the commission can. I mean, that's their right to do that. But it could affect the way we budget and we process our funding.
Does the commission vote on it yet? Or that's just a recommendation that went from the staff to the commission?
Correct, that's their recommendation. The Transportation Commission has their workshop coming up on September 18th, and then the meeting on September 19th. And I'll add to another benefit, if we just touch on this at least again later in the meeting, is that our Transportation Commission representative, Jim Kelly, he's not with us right now, but our understanding is that he's going to be able to join us in about 15 minutes or so. So he should be here for that that conversation a little bit later, if there'd be benefit in having our Transportation Commissioner be privy to any feedback or conversation.
All right. Any further?
No, Mr. Chair, that's all I've got.
All right. Move on to continue with reports. Finance Committee has their written report, page 18 packet. TAC has their written report on page 19 of the packet. Mobility has their written report in the handout section. And the Community Advisory Committee has a written report on page 20 of the packet. We'll move on to consent agenda, which as it works in Loveland, basically everything is non-actionable per se. He's right there. But any member can pull any item they want to discuss. Is everybody okay with those two items staying on consent?
Yeah, I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you all. All in favor, say aye.
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 Nays? Okay, hearing none. That passes the consent agenda. We'll move on to action items. First one is the fiscal year 2022 program of projects. otherwise known as the POP update. And there is a resolution part of this. But Joshua Ma from Transport, I'm going to assume you're online?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Camera. Hi, my name is Joshua Ma. I'm the Grant Administrator with Transport. We're requesting approval to update our fiscal year 22 program of projects for sections 5307, 5310, and 5339. Updates include changes to funding amounts and format to maintain compliance with FTA. However, the identified projects remain fundamentally unchanged. Original estimates were made in 2021 based on FY21 apportionments, with FY22 apportionments released later in March of 22. This was caused by the IIJA, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, enacted in 2022, causing a 28% increase in our 5307 program funds and a 44% increase in our 5310 funds. FTA requires a revision to the POP if cumulative project funds exceed, or changes in cumulative project funds exceed 20%. Also, FTA section 5310 has more specific requirements for the POP, different from those of 5307 and 5339. These include specifying the counties served, distinguishing between capital and operating expenses, and clearly identifying which projects meet the 55% minimum for the traditional 5310 projects. We used to consolidate our POP under 5307 guidance, but that didn't fully address the compliance requirements for 5310. So the new revisions updates funding amounts and aligns the format to comply with the more stringent 5310 guidelines, ensuring that we're not only meeting compliance standards, but improving the effectiveness and transparency of our POP. And have any questions?
Questions for Joshua? Don't think we have any, Joshua. Thank you. Oh, there is a resolution. I'll read the header of the resolution and then somebody can put it on the table. This is revising the fiscal year 2024-2027 Transportation Improvement Program regarding FTA 5307, 5310, 5339, Fort Collins, Loveland, Berthoud Transportation Management Area, Program of Projects for fiscal FFY22. I'll entertain, I guess I put.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
We got lots of.
That was Johnny and
My scribe has it.
Yes.
Okay, got an affirmative. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Super, thank you. All right, we'll move on to discussion items. Number 15 of the agenda is the North Front Range 10-year priority list update. Becky, welcome to center stage.
Just gonna go sit over here if that's all right.
Wherever you're comfortable.
All right. So as Paul mentioned, we are talking about the 10-year priority list update, which I believe some of you were, well, most of you were here the last time that we updated it. But this is something that started in 2019 with CDOT, wanting to have a 10-year list of a pipeline of projects to be able to move through, to show progress, to show a more midterm list of priorities and projects that could get done throughout the state. And so in early 2020, January to be specific, the North Front Range NPO had a workshop where we had all of our council members and TAC members come and look at lists of projects that we had from our RTP, the ballot measures from 2019, as well as some of the CDOT projects to look at and vote on what are the priorities within the region? And so in the lead up to this workshop in 2020, we went through a process of deciding from our 27 regionally significant corridors, what were the priorities of the priorities? And so we came up with 6 priority corridors. So that's I-25, 34, 85, 287, 392, and State Highway 14. And then from those 6 corridors, that's where we got the projects. So we have roadway projects, we have transit projects, and we also had non-motorized projects. So like trails and things like that. So we went through this whole exercise. We had dot voting, we had people getting up, moving around, we had TAC members advising council members, so the technical folks advising the policy members. And so we went through, and it was actually really successful. It was really good. We only had to go through 2 rounds of voting. We thought we had plans for it. But we made it, and everyone had dots, and it was actually really easy to see where the priorities were, because you could physically see how many dots there were for each category. And so we came up with a priority list. We submitted that to CDOT in like the next week, and that went into the original 10-year list. We've updated it every year since. So we updated it in 21, we updated it in 22, we updated it in 23 for our 2050 RTP, and it was a notation within the RTP so that we can change this list whenever we want to, and we don't have to update the RTP. So it's just noted, and it's its own standalone document, which makes things very easy and much easier for the rest of us. And we provide that to CDOT when they request it. So now that CDOT has kicked off their 2050 plan update, we are once again looking at our list of projects and wanting to see what those priorities are, what's left on the original list that we have from 2020. Because we've actually accomplished quite a lot. And a lot of those projects have either been funded or have been completed even and moved off the list. So the request is, and in talking to the TAC members as well last month, and with the executive committee prior to this meeting, having another workshop where we get everybody together, instead of just coming to you, as we've done with the last 3 updates, and saying, okay, here's the list, here are the ones that we've done, here's what's left, are we still okay with this list? Going and holding another in-person only workshop where we basically redo the 2020 workshop with a new updated list of projects from different sources. So coming from the RTP, if there's any other plans that we can pull from. I don't know that there's ballot initiatives, and that's probably a good thing to pull from. But looking at that and then doing that voting again, and then coming together and agreeing on what those priorities are for the region. We do have 3 tiers of projects for each of the 3 categories. Obviously, the roadway ones are much larger and longer than the transit and the non-motorized. The question of, the TAC and staff are recommending we have a workshop, but then with this PD14, I don't know how soon we would want to do that in light of the PD14 discussion that was held this morning. So I guess the first thing is how soon would we want to do this? And then would someone be willing to host? Do we think 2 hours is enough time?
Last time, in 2020, it was 2 hours.
2 hours, but we ended up not needing the full time, but that's okay.
Are we gonna keep projects that are currently on the list, or we really wanna reevaluate projects that haven't been completed?
So I have asked TAC members to provide me, to review the list, the projects on the list, and to tell me if projects have been funded and need to be taken off the list, or if we keep them on the list. And I haven't heard from anyone to take anything off yet. Other than a couple that I know for a fact have been funded on the transit side. But for the most part, no. This list is, our projects still need to be funded. So.
Are we gonna add to the list too then?
As long, ideally, as long as it's in the RTP, because that means it's already cleared conformity. Right. So yes, we can pull things from the RTP.
RTP.
Yeah.
We can add and subtract, basically, right?
As long as they're on these 6 corridors, unless council wants to reevaluate the priority corridors. So.
Well, I guess I wasn't here in 2020, so. That's the efficiency of it, that process, and duplicate it. I don't see why we need to recreate the wheel on something.
I think it was just me and Will and maybe, I don't know if Scott was there, because I think Barbara Fittmeyer was still there.
Yes, she is.
And Mr. Chair, I see 2.
That was really productive, though. I'm happy to host.
My favorite mayor. So these questions are just.
Scott and I got our hands up.
Johnny, go.
So one of the things, I mean, I want to see the list, and I appreciate you, Becky, pulling the list together. I don't want to recreate a list. I mean, those priorities, we got to bring them up the way they are, and we got to put them on the table. I don't think it's going to change much, right? When we did this effort last time, it went really well, and we were more directed by CDOT last time, and I think I don't want to be directed by CDOT this time. I want to be able to have our constituents on this committee, on this board, be able to articulate their concerns and their needs. But last time we were sort of guided, like with the priorities of PD14 and other things, and that I didn't think that was right? And wouldn't it be lovely if you had this, or wouldn't it be lovely if you did that? Well, yeah, people go over and stick their things on it, and then all of a sudden turn around and those are on the list, and everybody's like, how did our list get that way? So I really think the process we used was fine, but I think we should define, Paul and his team should work with the chair and the vice chair to define the process so we are allowing people to speak what they need.
So I will say that this list that we're talking about is our list. This is the NFRMPO's list of priorities. We changed the name to be the NFRMPO's priority list. And whether or not what we submit to Region 4 makes it onto Region 4's list that ultimately makes it onto CDOT's statewide list, that doesn't matter about the projects on the priority list, that it's still the priorities for the region. And so we will still advocate for those projects.
Becky, I understand what you're saying, but at the end of the day, the 10-year plan in their effort is a federal process where the local government should be helping articulate projects throughout the regions. And I understand that we're not dealing with that no more, but the whole reason TPRs and the whole reason MPOs and the whole reason COGS were set up was those people can speak for their constituents in their area for projects that needed to happen in their area, not DOT tell us what projects we were going to do. And that's why PD14 is so important, is because they're dictating what we're going to do. And I think we as a TPR should be saying, these are our priorities. And if there's any money, we want to put it here. The Upper Front Range does that. The Eastern TPR does that. Other communities do that. But we got to make sure they're getting on the list.
Becky, you want to respond, or we'll move on to Scott on the phone?
We can move on.
Scott, you still there?
I am, yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Unsurprisingly, I agree with Johnny. Johnny, of course, last time we went through this process was the Region 4 director. I was a commissioner and did actively participate in the process. I found it incredibly democratic and incredibly fair, and it needs to be done in the same way again. Of course, that is my opinion, but I will state it firmly. I thought it was an outstanding process. We need to stick with the corridors, and I agree with Councilman Olson wholeheartedly. I don't care what DD14s talk about. I don't care what the Department of Transportation talks about. Geez, if we only had more central planning, we'd be better. No, planning is from the bottom up. It is from the local up. And that's exactly what this organization needs to advocate for, or we're feckless in nature. Either we believe in the local planning process and we state it, or we don't. I happen to continue to believe in that, and we'll drive that upwards. And if they don't want to take our suggestions, then fine. At least we took the assertion to make them. So therefore, I believe we should go through the process again.
I don't hear any dissenters on the process. Right?
Yeah, no.
And Mayor Berthoud has given us his house for a couple hours.
Are you the bank? Absolutely.
So what's left? Pick a time?
Just a month, that would be good to hold this in so we can then schedule it out, so.
All right, Johnny?
I am sure the city of Greeley would be more than willing to host it at our wonderful Funplex or somewhere within in a location in Greeley.
I think.
Will already had offered to host it.
Yeah, Will's already got it.
Hey, I
Okay,
hear
well,
Lugo's Tacos is really good.
I have never, I couldn't hear Will, so I couldn't hear that. So I'm good. We'll do it both.
Really, actually, you guys might have more room, so we can go with that.
All right, let's go with Greeley.
I mean, we said Bertha.
Guys, let's do Bertha. I'd love to have you guys down there, always.
Miles on my car list.
So just in looking at times, would a morning time and then, or an afternoon block of time be better? And are there days I should avoid? I know Mondays and Tuesdays are usually pretty heavy with local government meetings that you guys all have. If it's like a Friday good, a better, or a Thursday, or what would be a good?
But maybe a doodle poll?
I can do that.
There we go.
But would morning or afternoon times, so that way I can.
I mean,
Sort of
especially in the
narrow it
morning,
down.
but.
Yeah. I'd pick
Not
morning.
too early.
Well, I'm thinking like a 10 noon kind of
Yeah.
thing, so.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Okay.
And we can put Bertha and Greeley on the doodle poll.
No, I'm
just kidding.
Just kidding.
I don't want to see
That would be
that.
interesting.
Just kidding. We'll have it in Bertha.
Thank you for that.
And I will work with the TAC to get all of the projects from these 6 corridors that have not been completed, that are also in the RTP on the list, so we have everything that we could possibly choose from on these lists to vote for.
And we'll get those
Yes,
somewhat in
and
advance.
yeah, and then ahead of that, whenever we just do schedule it, I'll redo what I did last time, which was to talk through how the voting will go to make sure everyone agrees ahead of time, so there are no surprises. You know, everyone knows how many votes everybody gets and how the process will work. And so I'll go through that council meeting before we have this.
Question, will there be some presentation or discussion of each of the proposed projects? How will we learn more about the individual projects that we're voting on?
Not in the workshop, but we can figure out how best to make sure everyone is aware of what all
So
of
that
those
we come with
projects.
some
Yeah,
knowledge.
not at that workshop, but yes, we can brainstorm how that is best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Because it was, last time it was 150 projects. So, yeah, there's fewer now.
That's good.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, and maybe on the sheet, we could just delineate which are already on this and which are kind of coming from the R2P.
Yeah.
Because that way we're not, you know, I don't know, I mean, it seems like there was some discussion, and Johnny, are you saying that you don't want to see any of the newer projects because we have enough that we haven't done already, or at least if we could delineate those, people can vote for those?
No. I think we bring the ones forward and we probably don't take anything off, but if there's a newer project that says, hey, this is our top priority and everybody agrees, that might move in and move up. But I think eliminating the projects you have sort of dilutes your pool of projects.
Commissioner James, you have your hand up?
Sorry, that was from last time, but let me put it down. But let me just agree in the fact that if we agreed a few years back on projects that have not been funded or advanced, then unless there's something that screams this is a higher priority now, that project should stay on there, and we should consider new ones as well. But process worked. The projects remain the projects. If we chose them a few years ago, unless there's something that is a higher priority from a safety standpoint, then I'm believe they should be considered again, but I believe the process was sound a few years back, and it will continue to be sound as we move forward.
Great. Anything else? Becky, I think we have a plan.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Item number 16, MMOF call for projects, discussion number 3. Mark,
Thank you, Mr. Chair,
you are up.
members of the council. Today we're going to wrap up the discussion on the process for the 2024 MMOF call for projects. Next slide, please. In terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to revisit some of the core elements of the program, including the MMOF program goals, the funding estimates, the proposed schedule. We're also going to look at the maximum funding requests, the application submission requirements, as well as next steps. So the program has 6 goals. They include benefits seniors by making aging in place more feasible, benefits residents of communities in rural and disproportionately impacted communities, providing them with more accessible and flexible public transportation services, provides enhanced mobility for persons with disabilities, provides safe routes to school for children, increases access to and or usage of transit or multi-use facilities. And this was added by the NPO in the call for 2019, and reduces emissions of air pollutants, including hazardous air pollutants and greenhouse gases that contribute to adverse environmental effects, including but not limited to climate change and adverse human health effects. Next slide, please. In terms of the funding estimates, this should be familiar to you, we brought to you last month. So between 2024 and 2028, we're looking at $4.5 million available. The initial funding estimate came at 5.9, but with award funding, reduced it by 1.3. And so, like I said, the total available for this call is about 4.5 million. Next call, next slide, please. In terms of the schedule, the only change from what came last month pertains to the project description due date, and this allows staff to determine project categories, the data needed for greenhouse gas emissions analysis, as well as eligibility. Next slide, please. In terms of maximum funding requests, this component was discussed at the last TAC meeting. TAC consensus was to move forward with this approach. So as you can see here, it's broken up by project category. So in this instance, 75% of the available funding would go towards category A projects and 25% towards category B projects. And then as far as the maximum award per agency, essentially it'd be half of the total funding available. So in this instance, the agency would be able to go for about 2.2 million available funding. A couple things to keep in mind with this scenario. If the NPO does not receive applications totaling the amount of funding available for each project type, the scoring committee can recommend awarding funding to the applications received. Also, if the NPO does not receive enough applications to honor the funding split per agency, the scoring committee can decide to recommend planning council award funding to an agency exceeding the limits that were specified. And ultimately, the funds are final authority of the funds is through you. Next slide, please. So in terms of application requirements, these are all things consistent with the last call in 2022. Essentially broken them down into 4 main categories. In terms of the MMOF program, it requires a match of 50% unless your community qualifies for match reduction. Projects need to address at least one MMOF goal that I mentioned earlier. And projects must meet or exceed minimum MMOF request size for each application. In terms of funding, the maximum amount of funding each applicant may be awarded is half the amount available per project category, as I noted earlier. And projects must be able to allocate funds prior to the deadlines. In terms of the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, roadway projects must be on a regionally significant corridor, as identified in the 2050 RTP. Projects impacting a regionally significant corridor or regional transit corridor must be consistent with the 2050 RTP corridor visions. And projects need to address at least one goal and at least one performance measure from the 2050 RTP. In terms of the 2021 Active Transportation Plan, or ATP, active transportation projects must impact a regional active transportation corridor for the 2021 ATP or provide a safe route to school. Also, projects impacting a regional active transportation corridor must be consistent with the corridor visions in the 2021 ATP. And finally, as far as other requirements, projects must comply with applicable local land use plans, local or regional transportation plans, and corridor studies. Also, projects must be within the NPO boundary, and ITS projects must conform to the Region 4 ITS architecture and support the Region 4 ITS strategic implementation plan. Next slide, please. In terms of submission requirements, applicants must submit a completed application, a project location map that indicates the project is within the NPO boundary, a completed equity analysis worksheet that includes short and long-term anticipated project burdens and project benefits on disadvantaged communities. Also need to include a detailed cost estimate, this is per unit and by phase, a letter of support by either the town mayor or the town administrator, and additional letters of support are optional. In terms of additional requirements, for ITS projects or projects impacting a state highway, applicants must submit a CDOT letter of support or concurrence. For applicants submitting more than one application per category, they must provide a project prioritization by category list to identify their project priorities. And for applicants submitting a project for new transit service, they must submit a sustainable funding plan. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, staff is currently working on the MMOF guidelines document. We recently sent the document out for comment suggestions by TAC. They'll be providing their comments by early October before the next TAC information goes out. And then in terms of the process, we'll be going to TAC later this month for their recommendation, and then come to you for action on October 3rd. So that covers my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions or comments.
Excellent, Mark. Any questions?
Awesome.
Commissioner Stevens.
So some of the funding got taken by, some of the MMOF money disappeared because it went to the ozone-free fairs. So the state was able to do that. So we're talking about funding multiple, like we're using funding for multiple years. Do we have any guarantee that that won't happen again? And what if that happens, and where would we draw funds from if we had allocated all those dollars and then they said, oh, by the way, we're taking away $27? I mean, it happened once. So is that why we have $1.4 million less?
So that was towards projects that were within.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
But we still have less than we would have had because of those dollars. So I'm just saying, like, I mean, it happened once. So, I mean, do we have any assurance from CDOT or the state, our state legislators that won't happen? I mean, I'm not trying to be glib here. I'm like, really like, right. I mean, what if we allocated dollars? Because some of these dollars already went.
Well, I have an answer to that question. It's a good question.
What was the logic last time when it went away? And
well, we didn't even know it was going away. We didn't know that the MMOF, we didn't know it was going, we didn't know that that's where the funding was coming from. I mean, we thought it was maybe some state MMOF funds, and it became the MMOF funds at the NPO and TPR level that got rated as a kind of extreme word, but I mean, we lost dollars, and we didn't know that when some of us were advocating for dollars for that project, because there weren't any other dollars. I mean, I get it, there's no other place, but I mean, I just want some security that we're not, like, how would we come up with money if we allocate this all and then they decide to do that again.
What did we do last time?
Well, we,
Couldn't do anything.
I mean, I guess it could go from future dollars, but I mean, how far out are the MMOF dollars promised?
So I'm gonna phone a friend in the back. Do you have anything to provide on that?
I would. So once a project is contracted and budgeted, they can't take, and no one can take those funds away. We do have funding amounts, and that's why it says it's a planning estimate, because even with the federal funds, we get told, well, these are planning estimates. So we award, we do hold back a little bit just in case, and sometimes they come in, lower or higher, and then we have additional funds or less funds. But once something's contracted, then that's set, and it should not change unless it comes in under, and then they give it back. So in that regard, it shouldn't change once it's contracted and IGA is in place. For projects that are awarded but don't have that yet, it could take it away, I suppose. But I don't envision that, since it's so soon with the fiscal years, that would happen. If it was much further out, like to say 30, be much more likely that they would take those funds back. Possibly. So.
You good? Anything else?
Yes.
It is what it is. No more questions?
Oh, was there a minimum amount for these?
There was. Hold on one second. I don't have
Okay,
it.
no, that's all right.
And it's something that Anna Rose had covered, I believe, last month.
Yeah, she probably did. I'm sorry for that.
So as far as infrastructure projects, there's a $300,000 minimum project size. And then for transit projects, non-infrastructure, planning projects and studies, there's a $25,000 minimum request. And again, they're always wanting you to put if possible, even like grouper projects to just up the project, the cost. They're trying to stay away from that lower cost of the projects if possible.
Can you give an example of a non-quantifiable or non-GHG reducing project that would still meet the criteria?
Did you bring this question up last month, by any chance? I mean, I think that was.
Sorry if I did. Would that be like an like what, I don't think I did, did I?
I've got a
just wanna
couple
know.
examples if you need some, Mark.
Sure.
Yeah, so like some non-quantifiable projects, studies would fall into that.
Okay.
And you can't quantify the greenhouse gas reductions from that.
Okay.
And also funding of continuing operations of transit services too. If it's a new service, then you can quantify that impact, but if it's an existing service, you're just backfilling funding. And so that's why, like, in our format, we've got the two slightly separate categories to be able to score the quantifiable and not.
I'm gonna remember that for next time. I don't know that I asked it, maybe I did.
Somebody write it down. We can look
Why
at
not?
this.
Throw the red flag.
And also one other one too, we do have is operating capital costs for on-demand transit is another example.
Oh, okay.
All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Good job. Let's move on to council reports. Agenda item 17, Transportation Commission. Commissioner Kelly has arrived.
Hello. All right. Did you all bring up earlier at all the accident that happened down in Palisades? Yeah, so if you all don't know, but two CDOT employees were on the side of the road fixing a sign, and somebody this was just 2 days ago, wandered off the lane and hit them with the Jeep. And so the Shoshana, the governor, everybody is trying to work with families and stuff, but yeah, two CDOT employees got killed, and and the Jeep rolled over and the passenger died as well. So that's the commissioner in the area is going to visit with the folks and stuff like that. So
Was that a full construction zone or just a sign being?
it was just the sign being worked on, and somebody wandered across and didn't do it's law that if there's a car on the side, you have to change lanes.
Right.
But that didn't happen, and a man and a woman in a Jeep, and the wife was killed, the husband is in the hospital, and the two CDOT folks are, and it's something that happens every couple of years, seems like, to CDOT employees. So the thing is obviously change lanes, move over, slow down. But last month's meeting was a lot of budget stuff and future planning. We got pitched heavily by probably 4 different groups on use concrete instead of asphalt. So we had the Concrete Association, we had suppliers, coming and doing presentations as the public, gets to speak, and trying to influence the commission to put pressure on CDOT to use more concrete, which their pitch is it lasts longer, it does not continue to release greenhouse gases, versus asphalt. So that took a bit. I'm expecting Greeley to pitch, sometime in the next 2 months, so hopefully sooner rather than later, October being the first stage. The 1601 interchanges that would go in on 34. I don't know if you're all familiar. It's a significant set of projects on 35th Street to 47th Street. I went out there the other day with Rich Christie, who's an engineer there in Region 4, and to get a good look at it. And it's a big project and looks very, very good. But the 1601 process is pretty complex. And do I have anybody who's really behind me who's put this together? Yeah, and I will be, I was supposed to leave in October, but if the really project doesn't come until November, I will be lobbying fellow commissioners in November. So, and that's probably the most significant thing that's coming down the line for this region that the commission's going to deal with. So, yeah, that's my report.
Great, thank you, Jim. Questions?
I just want to make sure too that everybody knows that.
I was gonna bring that up, but
Oh, I'm sorry. I've told that, I mentioned that at the commission meeting, and it's been something that's, thanks for bringing it up, Paul. I will be leaving the commission sometime within the next few months, and that has been since maybe early August, and we're looking to interview people that could potentially take this spot. And if anybody here happens to know somebody great, there is somebody that's in charge of boards and commissions that is out knocking on doors, trying to talk to people that maybe they know, the governor knows, et cetera. And some other folks in the region bringing people to me to maybe go through the first stage of, this is what this position is like, this is what you're going to do, this is what you have to do, this is et cetera, et cetera. So if you have, you know, if anybody wants to do this job, talk to me. Okay?
Do you have to be a Democrat?
You know, I think, so I interviewed a Republican the other day, and, you know, I would think that, no, I would think that there's some political advantage to, you know, putting a Republican on the commission, as long as, you know, you have to look at, well, what are the governor's goals, right? And if you agree with the governor's goals, then you probably, you know, could be in the running, right? So, you up for this?
I'm an independent, so I qualify.
Okay, so you qualify. So am I, by the way.
All right, anything else for Jim? We'll see you before you leave, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Commissioner. All right, let's move on to the CDOT. Hosey has taken position. Let's see, you don't have anything in the packet, so.
No
Go forward.
verbal update tonight. So usually I come here and I give you some project updates and some fun CDOT initiatives that we're looking towards, but I want to elaborate a little bit on what Commissioner Kelly said. Yesterday, 10:42 a.m., CSP did get notice of a fatal accident, and I'm going to try to keep my composure here because it's pretty tough for CDOT folks. Two of those individuals out of the three that were killed in that crash were Trent Umberger and Nate Jones. They are part of our Region 3 group near Grand Junction. We don't know everything on the incident, but we do know that a driver of a Jeep Grand Cherokee drove off the right side of the road and collided with Trent and Nate, as well as their CDOT truck. They were doing everything right. They had their signage up. Were out of the vehicle walking back towards it, from what I understand, when they were struck. CSP told us that when they hit the CDOT truck, that caused the Jeep to roll. The driver of the Jeep was transported to a hospital in Grand Junction, and he had minor injuries. He was treated and released the same day. This is standard protocol for CSP while they go through their investigation. His passenger, who was an adult female, and also his significant other, did not make it. She died at the scene. And it's just a very tragic, I don't even want to call it an accident, it's a tragedy. So it's very active investigation with CSP. We don't know why the Jeep veered off the road. They are looking into potential causes, which includes looking into impairment. They do not believe that was a significant cause of this crash, as well as potential distracted driving. They don't believe excessive speed was a part of this incident either. But I'm here because I want to implore you all to advocate to your teams, your constituents, the importance of safe driving. We all want to make it home, but my crew out there, they are brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, husbands, wives, friends, colleagues. They are so much more than the orange hat you see on them. As far as Region 4, you guys are all aware that our I-25 project is in full swing. We started construction in May from Meade to Berthoud, and that's going to be a 4-year-long endeavor. And just between May and July, we had 42% of crashes within the corridor were a direct result of careless driving. 31% of crashes were a result of people following too close, and 8% were a result of distracted driving. So I just want everyone to keep it top of mind. We can all make it safe to our destinations if we do our part. You will also notice in this same spirit, we're going to have increased safety messaging along the construction zone in the I-25 corridor, because the best way to reduce crashes is, of course, to have drivers be part of the solution by following the speed limit of 65 miles per hour and never drive distracted. CSP has said this many times, but construction speed limits are set for a variety of factors. There's a lot of different things and that go into that. Speed limits in construction zones, they are not suggestions, they are law. And I would also like to end it on, most people think crashes in construction zones are a result of construction activity. That is not the case. Data has shown that it is because of drivers. we can't change human behavior. I wish I could, but if you guys could just, it's a call to action. If you could just please inform people of the importance of keeping their eyes on the road, because it goes so much farther beyond themselves. And that's it. I just want to say thank you all for your advocacy and support there.
Thank you for the information. Just came to mind, Loveland anyway, the counselors get 2 or 3 minutes of free time. And I think that'd be an ideal time for any one of us to ask our particular jurisdiction to slow down.
Sure.
Pay attention.
Great idea.
I went to Denver probably 3 times in the last week. It's kind of scary, and it's not because of people are growing way too fast in construction. So anyway, if we can all contribute, I think that.
Thank you.
That's it, Josie?
That was it.
All right,
Quick
thank you.
question for you. Oh, yeah. Is there an update or progress report on the State Highway 14 safety survey study?
Yes, we are in the collecting data phase. I believe soon we'll be getting an initial draft report. I haven't seen it yet. My traffic engineer is leading that study. So I will check in with her. It should be coming out soon. And are you on those emails?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. I will make sure all of you get, I'll make sure all of you get included just so you can be informed. But that draft recommendation will have, it'll go over the data, it'll go over what the recommendations are. They're going to collect a little bit more feedback during that time. And then the final report, gosh, I don't want to misspeak, but the final report I think should be done end of the year, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Okay. But we will look to that study and the recommendations in that study to inform potential 10-year plan investments. Highway 14 is an extraordinarily dangerous corridor for several reasons, mainly because it was not a corridor that was meant to have a lot of commuter traffic when it was built. It was a lot for freight. It's a hazmat route, one of the only 2 in the area for east-west. But with the development occurring and commuters rapidly moving to the area, we have a lot of impatient drivers trying to get around garbage trucks due to the landfill. We have a ton of head-ons. It's County Road 31 and 14 come to mind. I live right by there, and it's frequent, and it's scary. They have a group initiative with community members, and they call it Arrive Alive because it's the goal for everybody. So I will keep you all very informed on 14. I know I'm personally invested in it. I live right off of it. So
am I.
Really?
I'm at 14 and 23.
I'm 33 and 86. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. We got some
And it is, it's growing fast, and it's becoming, as you said, very evident that it's turning into something that it was never designed for.
Well, and we had a public meeting with CSP a few months ago, gosh, sometime last year, and we had all of our, it was a law enforcement led meeting, and it was a great discussion, but we got to hear from them about the speeds, the excessive speeds that people are driving, and they're so fast that law enforcement actually can't chase them because it's more of a danger after a certain amount of speed. So there's just a lot of issues. I do feel the safety study, without knowing what it's going to recommend, I'm assuming maybe more turn lanes to allow people to have safe passage. But we have a lot of site issues, especially near the sheep farm, near 29. It's very difficult for people to stop and turn and have people not hit them. It's just, geographically speaking, it's a challenging corridor.
It's going to be a tough one, for sure.
But that safety study is going all the way from Larimer County Road 5 all the way through 43, which goes through the town hall. Yeah. So we're trying to tackle most of the corridor that seems to be a problem.
Very good. Appreciate the update.
There's a lot of you can pass in a lot of those places, but then there's cars coming on the road at different driveways, little roads and stuff. It's kind of dangerous.
I see all the time when someone's trying to turn left against traffic and they're waiting for an opportunity. We have people passing on the shoulder.
Yeah.
So we have people coming 65, 70 miles an hour. Someone's passing on the shoulder. They don't realize the vehicle stopped, and it's driving behavior that I wish we could all change. But We just need to keep messaging it.
I blame it on the sheep, but that's.
Me too.
All right, thank you, Joseph. All right, staff reports. A written report, you can find that on page 49 of the packet. Colorado Transportation Investment Office, that's a written report, you can find that on page 51 of the packet. Commissioner James, you are up. You get a double header with the I-25 Coalition and the US 34 Coalition.
Both coalitions met. Both had heard good conversations as far as the updates on the projects on both the I-25 and Highway 34 corridors. Things continue to go well there. Many of you are at the meetings. Rather than boring you with the details, I'll just say that joint advocacy continues to do good things. Josie, I'm moved by your report. My condolences to your team members at CDOT. We must continue to advocate for the safety of our roads. We must continue to advocate for the expansion of capacity to handle the doubling in population we've seen in this region. Do we need any more evidence? And when will CDOT, especially at Howard Place in the C-suite, take advantage of this? Commissioner Kelly, with the time that you have left, advocate for this. May the new transportation commissioner, whether they agree with the governor or not, advocate for this. When will we sit up and take an example of what's going on has nothing to do with climate change or greenhouse gas and everything to do with a need for increased capacity. We must improve the safety of these roadways. And thank you for allowing me the indulgence of exceeding the description of my report. We've got to lift our voices on this stuff, folks. We just do.
No problem at all. Thank you. Well said, Commissioner. Non-attainment area air pollution mitigation enterprise, otherwise known as NFRMPO.
That's right.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes, we met on August 29th, and we will have the NOFO, the notice of the funding coming out on September 30th. I think last month people were asking about minimums. There is no maximum, so even though it's considered small grant funding, a person could apply, or an entity could apply for up to the $18 million that's available in that fund. There is a $500,000 minimum. And I think there was one other question about that. So yeah, $18.25 million available. And as far as the match, the suggested match is 20% from local communities. But there is a provision for a hardship waiver reduction that the board would consider following the MMOF model. So remember the MMOF model, some communities have a smaller match or no match at all. And so we would consider that. Because there's an equity component, we don't want to, any communities to be taken out of the running because they can't do the match. So that's, we're excited because we're about to get that funding out the door. So I think that application will be open for a few months, but we will decide next month how long that will stay open.
It's open now, right?
No, it's open on the September 30th, yeah. So I think that probably through the end of the year, and then we'll be looking at applications in the beginning of the year. And the only other thing that happened that was sort of board regulations and how we, open meetings, policies and stuff. The AG's office kind of gave us a tutorial on that again. And I think with the Regional Air Quality Commission, Dina really covered kind of what we did. And I mean, Dina is actually on the rack now. So, I mean, if we want to have her do, if she's going to be doing she was one of the new appointees. And so it may make sense that she covers it in the beginning to like not have one at the end or for her to do it at the end or whatever works, but.
Okay, we'll let Paul figure that out. All right. Front range passenger rail, Will and Tricia.
Sure. So we had a discussion on a Longmont rail crossing elimination. They wanted a letter of support. There was a bit of confusion on why this is in front of the board, but ultimately the rail district supported that. Otherwise, our general manager gave an update on HR and their hiring plan for 2026, more planning professionals, more communication professionals. Also, moving from the 2024 to 2026 ballot measure, he was talking about some preliminary discussions they're having with CTIO and some regional planners. That also got some pushback too on why the board is not more involved. So there's a long conversation regarding that, but as far as reports here, wasn't that substantive, didn't really go anywhere. And finally, our retreat is October 17th and 18th. That's all I really have.
Is it a real retreat or is it 2 days of work?
It's, well, the last 2 years were, yeah, mixed bag, but you do get work done, okay, yeah, depending on who's the facilitator, but.
Tricia, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone who came tonight for traveling up to Fort Collins. And since we are so far ahead of schedule, I've got plenty of time here to see like all the amazing things we're doing in Fort Collins.
Where's the nearest water? Whatever you want.
So the city council has a couple priorities that really tie in with the transportation work that we're doing. So we're trying to advance a 15-minute city by igniting neighborhood centers and, just making sure that our residents have places they can get to that are walking or biking distance. And then also advancing a 15-minute city by accelerating our shift to active mode so they can get to those places on their bikes or walking. So the first project I want to tell you about is our 10-year transportation capital improvement program. And this tool will prioritize the recommended transportation capital projects from several of our recent planning efforts, like our active modes plan, our strategic trails plan, and the transportation capital project prioritization study. And this will let us look at transportation projects that will help the city meet our goals for climate action, equity, modes shift, and safety. And then the next one that I'm really excited to see moving forward is the West Elizabeth Bus Rapid Transit Design Project. And the city in 2022 was awarded a $1.3 million MMO side of the table, grant from the NPO. Thank you for the final design of that project. And we're using those grant funds for the 60% design documents, which were completed in July of this year. And then the design team's working towards 80% design with anticipated completion in early 2025. And then the city was also awarded a $10.7 million raise grant in 2023 for the construction of a foothills transit station and a roundabout at Overland Trail and West Elizabeth. And with that funding secured, the design focus will be on those elements early in the 80 to 100% design stage. And this enhanced travel corridor will connect Mason Street and CSU main campus to South Overland Trail and the Foothills campus. And we'll have BTR on there along with similar to what's on Mason right now. And there will also be safety enhancements for all transportation modes on that corridor. And we're hearing a lot of excitement throughout the community for them. And I really want to point out the partnership that we have with CSU on this. And they've helped with the local match and they're coordinating with us on design. Another great project is the LaPorte Avenue multimodal improvements. And this is going to help complete the city's low-stress bicycle network. And the construction's been completed on the eastern half of that. And we're beginning the work on the western half. And that should be completed next year.
Where's that from? Where does it go?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay, so I didn't know how many people would be familiar with
Is it on the
city
west side of
side.
town?
So the overall project is Fishback Avenue to Sunset Street. And the portion that's been completed is Taft Hill Road, between Taft Hill Road and Fishback Avenue. And so the continuation will be Sunset Street to Taft Hill Road.
Where's Fishback? West?
West.
Yeah.
Northwest.
Northwest, oh, okay.
Between Shields and Taft.
Actually, so
Yes.
all of that.
So the portion that was just completed, you know, where Stodgy Brewery is, it's near the. Which brewery?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I usually deal with breweries and people know kind of where that is. But Grandview Cemetery and east to Bishop, so just east of the Stodgy Brewery, that was a section that was completed just now. The section that we're completing this fall will be west of Taft Hill to where Pooter High School is. So in front of the Pooter High School there. And so that'll, I think that section.
And so will it be bike lanes or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raised bike lanes and
Is there any sidewalks planned for that? Yeah.
sidewalks and bike lanes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and part of prioritizing our active modes plan and our priority is safe routes to school.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we know that there was an accident there where some, on the corridor, somebody was, a young man was, like, a person fell asleep at the wheel and a young man got hit, and this was, like, I think in 2014 or 2015, we've been working on sidewalks for there so long, but, he is a paraplegic, he's in a wheelchair, and so, yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that it's kind of.
And then another project so that's the northwest side of town. I'm down in the southeast. They're almost like two different cities.
Sure they are.
Where's your ward? Is that where all the money's going?
Yeah, yeah. So these are actually a couple projects down in my district. There's the Siphon and Union Pacific overpass, and this includes funding from the NPO again, thank you. And this shared use path overpass will connect the new Mail Creek Trail, which if you are a big cyclist, is beautiful. You should go see it. That's from Kennard Middle School, and it goes over to Timberline. And there's now an underpass there for Timberline, and this overpass will connect that trail to the Power Trail, which is, a major north-south trail in the city. So that's really exciting, and we should see that begin this fall with completion expected next year. And then another one, continuing on the trails, is Power Trail at Hermione Underpass. Thank you again for funding for that. And this project will complete the regionally significant Power Trail, and it'll have an underpass under Harmony and just west of Timberline Road. You may remember we had a cyclist killed right near there. Was that last year back or 2 years ago? Last year. So this will be a really huge safety improvement for the south side of town, and enable people to remain on trails and not off the road. So I'm excited to see that one coming forward. And construction is scheduled to begin in the spring of 2025. And that's what we've got for you.
Excellent. Very good. A lot going on. Appreciate it. Anything further? Thank you for hosting. Food is excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a lot of food.
I was going to say, you may want to make that good. All right. This is my favorite part.